You ever stop and think about this? Animals in the wild, they're facing life or death situations all the time, right? But they don't seem to get the same chronic illnesses that we do. Why don't zebras get ulcers, or high blood pressure, or crippling anxiety? It's a really fascinating question. And the answer, well, it tells us something pretty profound and a little scary about our uniquely human relationship with stress.
So let's just dive right in with a really simple comparison to frame this whole thing. For a zebra, stress is a lion. It's real, it's physical, it's happening right now. For us, stress is a traffic jam. It's this ongoing psychological grind. Now, here's the kicker. Both of these things can trigger the exact same biological response, but the consequences, oh, they couldn't be more different. We're going to get into why.
Okay, so before we get into why our stress response goes so haywire, we really need to appreciate just how brilliant this system is when it works the way it's supposed to. And honestly, the animal kingdom is the perfect place to see it in action. So let's take a look at the biology of what we could call a perfect, life-saving stress response.
It all starts with this one super important concept, homeostasis. The easiest way to think about it, it's your body's happy place. It's that state of perfect balance, where everything, your temperature, your blood pressure, all of it is just humming along in the optimal range. And your body is working around the clock, 24/7, just to keep things in that sweet spot.
So a stressor, well, that's just anything that comes along and tries to knock you out of that happy place. For a zebra, the classic stressor is, of course, a predator. For the lion, hey, the stressor is the threat of starving to death. You see, these are short-term physical crises that demand an immediate, and I mean powerful reaction. And that reaction, that's the stress response. It is an absolutely magnificent, beautifully coordinated set of changes that your body unleashes to survive a crisis. The whole goal is just to get back to that balanced state of homeostasis as fast as humanly or, zebrally possible. It's basically a survival toolkit that's been fine-tuned over millions of years. And this is a perfect illustration of how it works. A lion shows up, instantly the zebra's heart rate and blood pressure just skyrocket, flooding its muscles with fuel. But at the same time, all the long-term, expensive projects, they're put on hold. Digestion? Nope, not now. Growth? Tissue repair? No time for that. Ovulating? We can do that later, if there is a later. Then, once the zebra escapes, the whole system just shuts off. Everything goes back to balance. It's perfect. It's efficient. It's life-saving.
Okay, so if this system is so perfect, so elegant, where do we humans mess it all up? Well, the problem is that we've taken this ancient survival hardware and we've started using it for things it was never, ever designed for. We've basically created psychological lions.
Yeah, this slide just lays out the core problem perfectly. A zebra's stress is acute. It's short, it's physical, and it's an adaptive response to a literal life or death threat. Our stress, it's usually chronic. It's psychological worry, a lot of the time about things that might not even happen. And when you take that same life-saving response and you just turn it on and leave it on constantly, that's when it becomes incredibly damaging.
So, why do we do this to ourselves?
Well, it all comes down to this amazing and sometimes really problematic part of our brain, the cortex. I mean, it's the part that lets us write symphonies and think about the meaning of the universe, but it's also the part that lets us worry. And here's the really critical piece. Your body has no way to tell the difference between a real lion hiding in the grass and the imagined lion of, say, giving a big presentation or having a tough conversation with your boss. The physical response is exactly the same.
So the crucial point here is this. We are basically the only species on the planet that regularly turns on this emergency fight or flight system for purely psychological reasons. When you fire that system up for 30 seconds to escape a real predator, you save your life. But when you fire it up for 30 years worrying about your mortgage, that's what makes you sick.
And that brings us to the price. The bill that eventually comes due. What actually happens to our bodies when we keep this emergency system running for months or even years on end? Let's break down exactly how this constant activation starts to wear us down.
It all starts with something called the sympathetic nervous system. Just think of it as your body's gas pedal. When a zebra sees a lion, it slams its foot on that gas pedal, and for good reason. But for so many of us, chronic stress means we're just driving around with that pedal permanently pushed to the floor. The system never, ever gets a chance to idle, to rest, to repair. One of the first victims of this is often the heart. That constantly surging blood pressure, that's hypertension. Your blood vessels, they're just getting battered by all that force, and they start to develop these tiny little tears and scars. They get stiffer, and that inflamed, damaged tissue, it's the perfect place for cholesterol and fats to grab on and start building up plaques. It's just crazy. A response designed to deliver oxygen faster for a quick sprint ends up slowly clogging the very pipes it's trying to supply. All right, next up, our metabolism. The stress response is constantly dumping sugar into your bloodstream for that quick burst of energy, right? So to deal with all that sugar, your body has to pump out tons of insulin. Over time, your cells start to get tired of hearing that signal. They become insulin resistant. This isn't just bad because it raises your risk for type 2 diabetes. On top of that, stress hormones literally make you crave junk food and tell your body to store any extra calories as dangerous fat right around your belly.
I mean, it really all just boils down to this one simple fact. The biological machinery we're all walking around with, it's ancient. It was designed for the savannah, not the boardroom. It is primed for a brief, terrifying physical fight, and it doesn't have a category for the kind of long-term, abstract anxiety that defines so much of modern life. And, beyond the damage to our hearts and our metabolism, maybe the most disturbing part of all this is what happens to the very organ that's causing the problem in the first place, our brain.
It actually turns out that chronic exposure to stress hormones is literally toxic to your brain cells. It can cause neurons in the hippocampus, that's a key area for learning and memory, to actually shrink and wither away. Ever find it hard to remember things when you're super stressed out? Well, that's why. It also messes with your frontal cortex, which can make you more impulsive and less able to make good judgments. And over the long haul, all this damage can speed up brain aging and seriously increase your risk for things like anxiety and depression.
And this is really the ultimate irony of being human, isn't it? Our big, sophisticated minds, our incredible ability to think and remember and plan for the future, that is the very thing that allows us to make ourselves chronically ill. We are, in a very real sense, smart enough to think ourselves sick. But, okay, here's the hopeful turn in the story. If our minds, if our own psychological state, can be the source of the problem, then doesn't it stand to reason they could also be the source of the solution? And all the research says, absolutely. A resounding yes. See, it turns out our stress response isn't just this automatic thing we have no say in. It can be moderated. It can be tamed. Things like having a sense of control over your situation, having some predictability, some information about what's coming, finding healthy outlets for your frustration, like exercise or a hobby, and maybe most importantly, having strong social support from friends and family. All of these things act like powerful buffers. They literally turn down the volume on the stress response and help protect our bodies from all that damage. So we're left with this final thought, right? We are uniquely vulnerable to psychological stress, for sure, but we are also uniquely equipped to manage it. If our own thoughts, our emotions, and our social connections have the power to trigger this ancient damaging cascade, then they absolutely must hold the power to protect us, to heal us, and ultimately to help us thrive.